I competed for Canada for about 7 years on the world tour, leading to the 96 Olympics. When you're an athlete, you can answer the question, who am I? When that chapter is over, it's jarring to an awful lot of people that they have no idea what that answer is. What do I do now? Who am I? Because I've defined myself. And just trying to figure out how to make career change, if you will. Conversation I had with somebody else, you have to put your big girl panties on and say, all right, I'm going to need to be able to take care of myself.
Yeah. Passion, inspiration, determination. Are you ready to jump into a better life? Welcome to our program, Jump Into Welcome to Jump Into It, a podcast and live show to help women jump into a better life. Hi, I'm your host, Gabriella Hellman, and along with me is my co-host, Anita Booth. And today we have a very interesting, very informative, and very dynamic woman as a guest, Margo Malowney, who has not only been an Olympian athlete, but she's also transitioned her life successfully into the corporate world. So we're very excited to have her discuss and provide us with her journey on how she's transitioned in her life from the many roles that she is playing. To start with, Anita, what are your thoughts around the challenges around transitioning from one stage of your life to another, and personally and professionally?
Hi, and welcome, Margo. Yes, thank you so much, Gabriella. So when I think about changing in innovation, I really think about adaptability and how much of a life skill that is, and it really saves people from being left behind. And I recall reading an article about adaptability recently, and they broke it down into two ingredients, one being flexibility and the other being versatility. So really the ability to go with the flow and being competent in many things, like a jack of all trades, is really a winning combination. And so I'm so excited to hear from Margo about her Olympic journey, her career transition from sports and into marketing, and how she's able to drive change and innovation in her life and work every day. So thank you for joining us today, Margo.
Well, thank you, Anita and Gabriella, very much for the invitation to join your coffee chats here. I love them. They're amazing. I've listened to a few of them. I've seen a few of the ones you've done prior to this, and I'm just grateful that you include me with the group of women that have already shared their journeys.
Thank you for that. It's really an honor to have you. And Margo, so let's lead into, as what Anita was saying, is can you share your journey with our listeners and the challenges and the experiences that you've encountered along the way?
Sure, that's a little question. We've already talked about the first part of my story is really about having been a professional athlete, and which culminated into being an Olympian. I competed in a beach volleyball. I played on the world tour. I competed for Canada for about 7 years on the world tour, leading to the 96 Olympics, which was the first time it was a full medal sport. What is the fun part for me, other than the fact that it's beach volleyball, you're on the beaches, you're playing in the most beautiful places in the world, was the fact that it was a brand new sport. When I started to compete internationally, it wasn't an Olympic sport at that point. We were surrounded by our colleagues and our competitors. We were just driven by our passion to play this game, to get better, to compete it, to develop the sport. There were no programs, there was no path ahead, there was no need to do this. There were hardly any coaches at that time. We were sort of at that front end on the female side. And that was one of the things that really, really drew me to the sport. And it sort of became, I sort of parlayed that into, Gabriella, as you said, largely a marketing type career, but the majority of the companies and the roles I've had have been with organizations that have a big challenge. They're in transition, they're in change, they're new, they're greenfield startup. I really enjoy the building process, and the experience I had through sport was trying to help build this sport at the front end, and it sort of led into a business career that really revolves around helping build and grow and innovate and change.
And what would you say were the challenges, the greatest challenges in dealing with this ambiguity and a lack of direction, and being able to, always land on your feet with confidence that you were on the right path?
Uh, I'm going to talk really about the transition from being an athlete. I'll just talk like specifically about that right now, because that's sort of the earliest and most significant transition. And as an athlete, the advantage is, I mean, it's very hard. It's a lot of work, but one of the key advantages is your goals are clear. Your direction is clear. The vision is clear. You don't have to sit by yourself and say, what am I going to do with my life? You know what you're doing. Those answers are written for you already. So your job is to figure out how you're going to get there. And you can work back, you can talk about paths, you can talk about your physical skill sets, you can look at your psychological, sports psychology skill sets, but you can start to parse it down and apply your own, where do I need work? But your goals are largely set for you, if you will.
Interesting. Yeah. Because the game is already defined. The rules are already defined. How you play it is more or less defined. But how you excel in it, maybe that's less defined.
Yeah, and that's where, every sport is going to be a little different. But I think that the transition from having that goal set, that's one of the biggest. There's sort of a handful of them. I've talked to athletes in one of my roles. I talked to athletes around the world from different sports, from sort of, like, I'm going to call it an elite sport, like it's semi-pro, pro, Olympic, amateur, college, university, all the way through to salaried multi-millionaires on the men's side, tier one sports. They all have the one thing in common that they all have is this sense of when you're an athlete, you can answer the question, who am I? I'm a beach volleyball player. I'm a soccer player. I'm a football player. When that chapter is over, it's jarring to an awful lot of people that they have no idea what that answer is. What do I do now? Who am I? Because I've defined myself by my sport for so long. So that question is common, is consistent across virtually every single athlete and every single athlete journey, if you will. What else is really interesting is the idea of coaches and managers. That's another, as an athlete, your coaches are very specific. They're both very focused on you. And they'll break down, they're helping you goal set, but they're actually giving you very personal, broken down feedback into very, very minute details. Lift your elbow, turn your footwork is a little different. Whereas when you transition to them in the real world, your managers are not giving that degree of guidance to you. So as an athlete, you need to understand how to interpret the feedback that your manager is giving you. And there's a real gap right now in the language that people are using on either side of that discussion.
Interesting. So yeah, go ahead, Anita. Sorry.
Oh yeah, I just wanted to jump in on that one because I agree that there is probably it would be jarring, right, to come from a very disciplined arena, and I would say that across the sports industry as a whole, and then you have to you're pivoting and starting again, but then you're dealing with maybe not one manager, like you said, you have that one-on-one and you build that rapport, and that person is your advocate, it becomes your mentor, they become much more to you, I think, than any manager really ever becomes to you, in the sort of that, like you said, the real world, unless not that you don't form bonds with certain people. I think you can and you do. I just think what they're offering at a managerial level is probably a bit of a gap from what you experienced for many years intensely, as what I think from my perspective. Is that so?
It is. I've had a lot of different conversations with, I'm going to say, like, former athletes making the transition, but also young women just trying to figure out how to make career change, if you will. And the one thing that keeps coming up is my transferable skills, and how do I take what I've learned in this world, what's relevant somewhere else. And so many women in particular, I haven't talked to many men, so I don't know, but don't feel that they have enough or the right transferable skills. And what my challenge back to them is move away from the skill sets. I can jump serve, I can pick up a phone, I can, whatever those skill sets are, I can run my digital marketing. And take it away to what are the intangible skills that you've learned? My time management is amazing. I am super accountable. I get back to people. I can move things forward because of that commitment to accountability. A lot of companies, I've been with 2 companies who've hired external executive coaches to help large groups of employees and teams move quickly. And the lessons that are coming out of those, in my experience, I was a little frustrated as an athlete because I'm like, we know this, that you're spending an awful lot of money to teach a lot of people about communication skills, about accountability, about time management, about so that you can move quickly. These are the skill sets that athletes have already built in, and they're ingrained. So my challenge is having athletes really start to understand that part of their skill set so they can talk comfortably about what they can contribute. That it goes beyond, I know how to skate, I know how to bend it like Beckham. Use a language that your hiring managers understand.
Yeah. So the transition from one style of management or one way of approaching something. I mean, not everyone has had the transition from an athlete to corporate. Sometimes it's, I'm a mother.
Exactly.
And I'm moving from a mother to a corporate, or I'm a corporate and I'm moving to an entrepreneur. And those are all major transitions where we have to transform. And, I like what you said, like a lot of the transferable skills are more soft, but they're the ones that drive the action that without them, we don't get to the finish line of where we want to go. So that's a really good point there. So how do you guide someone to really embrace change? Like if somebody is, at that stage, maybe they're not an athlete, maybe they're a housewife, maybe they're corporate, or maybe they're entrepreneur and they want to, go into retirement mode even, or out of retirement mode. Like what advice would you give, knowing what you went through with the transitions and changes in your life?
I've thought a lot about this because, for me, when I look back on my career, the things I wish I had done, I wish I had found mentors earlier. I wish I had, executive coaching, business coaching. I really wish I pursued that a lot more. I let my I'm going to say my insecurity of, I don't want to reach out to someone. I don't want to look vulnerable. I think there are more and more people starting to do that. I had an amazing conversation with a young woman just a week ago who reached out to me. We hadn't met before, but we had some mutual experience in our history, had a fantastic conversation. And I was really happy for her that she had done that because she was brave enough. She got over the discomfort of trying to extend her network, trying to learn from other people, and get feedback that can help guide your own career as you're making your choices. And that's something I think is really important that I wish I had done earlier. But a lot of those things, when I think about them, it really comes back to being brave, to sort of get over your own internal obstacles. They're just yours. If nobody gets back to you, that's fine. If 1 in 10 people get back to you, great. You're going to have a great conversation because that person wants to talk to you. So to me, it's tough. It's really hard because we get comfortable in our still spaces, and moving is where we're going to create some activity. So take a step, be brave, fake it till you make it type of, it talks about an imposter system or syndrome. Do something, take an action, just a small one, but do something, move the ball, move the needle, be brave. And that's everything else. All the other things that you let overwhelm you, start with being brave and taking a first step.
Excellent. Like feel the fear and do it anyway.
That's right. Exactly.
Yeah. And I like it that you say, you know what, one step at a time, because it's more digestible to look at it as one step at a time. I know when I have to uncover a heavy task, so I say, I'll commit 30 minutes or I'll commit 45 minutes. It's a lot better. It's more digestible and manageable than say, I'll commit 2 weeks to this right? Or 6 hours to it, just 45 minutes. And then that 45 minutes can, expand to 3 hours, who knows? But, if you break it down to bite sizes, you're more willing to take the steps.
I couldn't agree with you more. Even things like, from even like sweeping my house or using my Swiffer. I hate cleaning. And I don't want to clean the whole house. I'm just like, it's just such a big task. And so I say, okay, I'm just going to do this room. And I know I'm fooling myself, but it's a tool that works, because once I've done one room, I'm like, okay, I'll do the hallway, and then I'll do the hallway, and at little steps, baby steps, but I can talk myself into getting the whole thing done without having to set that as the destination out loud and feeling overwhelmed by how much work it's going to be. And I'm very aware of what I'm doing, but it still works.
Yeah. Ditto.
So Margo, I wanted to jump in and ask a bit about, I know you mentioned you sort of had some firsts in your sporting world, and one of them had to do with it was women's volleyball and being sort of the first women's team. Is that accurate? Because what I wanted you to get into a little bit was, being that first as, a woman, and we're talking about stuff around being imposter syndromes, and it's a woman who always thinks they can't, right? Just the way you guys were having your conversation, I was thinking it's only us women that talk that way, that we have to convince ourselves, that we have to, like, believe, put these things in our mind and envision it. And I love all those things, but if you thought about a man and what he would be doing, and I don't think he's envisioning and thinking he can't do it, right? So talk to us a little bit about being the, a first woman of a first team in that regard, and maybe some perspective on that.
Well, because the sport was so new, we ended up being the first. I was part of a team that was the first female team to compete internationally for Canada, which is pretty fun. And that was 1993, and you can edit that out if you need to. But then after that, we were the first team to. The 1996 games was the first time beach volleyball was a medal sport. We qualified for that, so we were the first Canadian team, women's team, to go to the Olympics in this sport. We actually competed in the very first match of the beach volleyball events itself. So there's all those little series of it. But I think for me, that first part, it's not really to sort of pat myself on the back, but it really leads to the things that I was drawn to and the things that energize me and motivate me and bring me joy. And I think that's part of, as we go through our journeys, a little bit of that self-awareness and leaning towards identifying the things that bring energy to you and identifying the things that you just find draining. And if we can spend time identifying those things for ourselves, it'll help us make the decisions that continually motivate, continuing give us energy. Change it's not as hard when you're energized to do what you're doing. It's quite easy when you're on a path that delivers joy every single day. When you're on a path that is full of tasks that are draining and demotivating, it's extremely hard.
Yeah. And sometimes you have to get to a point where you're really miserable to make that change. And that's really unfortunate. But, you talked a lot about being an Olympian. What about, was there a time, like when did the time say, hey, I want to go into corporate, I want to go into marketing? Was that kind of a plan while you were Olympian, or did you fall into that? Like, how did that whole transition happen with you? Was it very deliberate, or was it just, you went with the flow kind of thing?
It wasn't deliberate in the sense that if I could have competed and played this sport forever, the rest of my entire life, I 100% would have done it. I was starstruck by all of the amazing things I got to do. What happened for me after the 96 games, and I'm going to backtrack a little bit. I had a master's degree in international business. I did that. I pursued that in San Diego, where I could continue to compete and train in my sport. So the decisions I made for the sort of 5 years prior to the games really were all about keeping this sport accessible to me. And it was really hard to do at the time to do from Canada. So I'd chosen to go to Australia for a year. I chose to pursue my education in California. So I built all of that background coming into those games. What ultimately was what happened at the 96 games, I was completely 100% broke. I mean, just very practical. I felt I was ahead of a lot of my peers because I didn't owe anybody anything, but I didn't have any money. And I just thought, okay, if I stay for another 4-year loop, I didn't look at, as a beach volleyball athlete globally, I thought I really took a realistic look at what my career would look like. I was never going to be a gold medalist. It just wasn't in my wheelhouse looking at the talent that was out there. And that's realistic. That's not me. I think, we talk about SMART goals. I probably could have finished 5th, possibly a top 3rd if I got a really good draw and got some luck. The prize pool wasn't deep enough to be able to support that for 4 years. Looking ahead 4 years, I'm like, I would be 4 years older, still broke. And it was just a really practical decision, so I have a master's degree on one side. I've got 4 years of being broke. And this is when you're not a male baseball player, you don't have those dreams, those visions of making a $20 million salary. You have to just really think practically. And those were ultimately what my decisions were about.
So it was not your first decision to move into corporate. It was kind of like you fell into it because of
it was just practical. You have to I'm going to say this is part of the conversation I had with somebody else. You have to put your big girl panties on and say, all right, I'm going to need to be able to take care of myself.
And then how did you land back in Canada?
Every time I've been back and forth from California a couple of times, and every time I've come back, it's been for family reasons. Something going on here that I needed to return for. So the last time my father actually had a stroke. I came home. I really thought I'd be home for a few years while he recovered, and then I would move back to the States. But that's not how the world worked. And that was my temporary move back about 15 years ago. So I'm still here now.
Well, I'm glad you are. We never met you and you wouldn't be here.
And so what's in store for you, Margo, as somebody who constantly is innovating and changing and driving forward as we all hope to do. What's on the horizon for you? Do you have any other books? I know you're an author of a children's book, and are you looking to write some more, or what can you share with us?
Well, I would love to write more. I just don't know what about yet. I've always wanted to write. I had no idea what the book was about. And that little book, it literally just sort of came to me while I was fostering this little dog named Pearl, who was terrified of everything. And every time she would make any progress, I'd hear myself saying, "Good girl, Pearl." And the little story just sort of fell out of that. And it's a fundraiser for the rescue that I had been working with while I was fostering. So it was a beautiful project. And it was sort of during the pandemic, I took what I call a pandemic pause, and I did some of my margin notes, I call them. So I wrote this little book. I took a women's executive leadership course, which I highly recommend. Really, really important way to sort of unpack a lot of your past and hopefully try to channel your future a little bit. Right now, I have just resigned my most recent role. And we were just chatting about it before, and I plan to leave in about less than 2 weeks. I'm going to walk one of the Caminos, the Camino de Santiago, across Spain with my backpack and my bottle of water.
Very cool.
Fabulous. I love that. I loved hearing about it. We're going to have you back, and you're going to talk about the Camino.
Yes, yes, absolutely.
We'll do one episode on that.
Yeah.
Well, one of the things that we were talking about while we were talking about the Camino is the idea, for me, being in motion is it's a little bit meditative. Like I love painting walls. I can quiet my mind, but I have to be in motion. When I'm driving, I think better. I read something about it, having the motion gives you just enough of an activity in the back of your brain to release something interesting. I don't know what it was. But sitting still is really hard for me to just imagine things. But in motion, when I'm in motion, maybe it's just the blood flowing, the oxygen flowing. It's a wholly different thing. So I'm so looking forward to throwing on my backpack and being in motion for 5 or 6 weeks.
That's very
It's an energetic thing. So I think that'll come nicely for you doing the Camino for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm excited.
Yeah, because I find mine is gardening. It's a gentle activity, but it's, at the end it's so therapeutic and just so supercharged. Or painting the wall, right? And then also you get to see what you produced. It's not like if you go, going for a walk at the end, you feel good, but you don't get that. You're not, there isn't something tangible at the end of it, as opposed to painting or landscaping or some of the other things. I know when I was going through my drawers, I reupholstered 8 chairs. Painted, tore them apart, stapled them together. It was very therapeutic. It was
that's hard to do.
It is hard to do.
That's true. I'm impressed.
But yeah, the motion, I've never heard that before, but I could certainly relate to it.
I think a lot of people feel that way when they're driving. They feel like, I've heard lots of people say, I get my best ideas when I'm driving. There's something there that, like I said, just that little bit of activity with your visual cortex triggering something, it just allows a little bit more of the imagination to do its own thing, and you don't have to direct it so much, I think.
Yeah. There's also like the movement of the car and the humming, and they say that we should actually be in more accidents than we are, but there's something about we get into this.
We go into a trance.
We go into a trance, right? Or do you ever go, and you're going down the road, always going to work, and you go, no, I'm not supposed to go, but you went on autopilot, right?
Or how did I get there? I've said that before. How did I get here? Like, I'm here. I don't remember the drive here, but I'm here because you drive that same path. You just go on autopilot, and all of a sudden you're at work. You're like, I think I missed a few steps. Just like by visually missing them. I mean, you land where you need to land, but
that's right.
Anyhow, Margo, it was a pleasure having you with us tonight. Is there a way we could give to our audience who may want to get in touch with you? You're on LinkedIn. Do you have a website?
I don't have a website. I'm on LinkedIn fairly regularly, and then sometimes on Facebook. So I'm sort of lurking around those two right now.
Excellent. Well, thank you, Margo, for joining us and giving us an insight. What it's like to be Olympian. I had no idea, like the challenges and the micromanaging and I was aware of the intense focus and the discipline, but those skills that you get, those intangible skills, are lifetime skills, and so you're very fortunate to have been able to have that, play that game so early in your life.
Yes, without a doubt. It was a wonderful time, but the value that you can learn through sport is I think is highly underrated.
Well, life is a sport though too, right?
That's true.
It's a sport. Okay, well, thank you again, Margo. I hope you will join us for another show. We'll have another fabulous guest whose journey is sure to inspire us. To learn more about Jump Into It, go to our Facebook page, Instagram, or you can subscribe to our YouTube channel. You can also listen to us on our Jump Into podcast on your favorite platform. We are on Spotify, iHeartRadio, and Apple TV, to name a few. With the courage and knowledge to bring your ideas to life, get ready to jump into it. Thank you for listening. Passion, inspiration, determination. Are you ready to jump into a better life? Welcome to our program, Ready to Jump Into It.